economics of Star Trek are really interesting, and that's what I'd like to talk about. I'm Joe, and welcome to Starbase Nerd. Now, in today's video, I'm going to focus on the economics of the Federation. I might touch on a couple other things here and there, but the focus is on the Federation because different cultures have different economic, peculiarities about it. And one of the things that I want to start off with is the definition of the sort of economics that we're looking at, and that changes over time as the series is go on. Because if we if we look at Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager and so forth, those are all a post-scarcity society. And by post-scarcity society, I mean they have replicators. They have basically magic boxes that everybody has, everybody has, that will just put a steak on your table out of thin air. By rearranging the molecules, right? There is no scarcity of basic needs anymore because there are industrial replicators, there are personal replicators, they're everywhere. In fact, we see in Next Generation with his brother, Picard's brother, in the episode Family, is that they have this argument about having a replicator in the house because everybody has a replicator. And his brother does not want to have a replicator because he thinks it's too technologically convenient. He likes the idea of actually making your own stuff. And in that post-scarcity society, the only thing that is scarce are handmade items that are unique. That's why you have our, artisanal stuff like the Picard winery. They're hand making wine, which you can't get replicated because replicated wine exists, but it's not the same as something that has actually been created for that specific purpose by a person. But that doesn't count as scarcity in the broader sense because basic needs are being met. Everybody has a house, everybody has food, everybody has clothing. You're as they say in the first season episode, the neutral zone. We aren't obsessed with the collecting things anymore. We seek to improve ourselves, and then they say the same thing again in an episode of Deep Space Nine. And that's the economics of the 24th century. But if we go back a century to the 23rd century, when Star Trek, the original series, was on, we see it's a somewhat different thing because on the Enterprise they don't have replicators. They have the food slots. You put in the little card into the slot, and then it takes a second, and then oops, it pops up, and you have chicken soup. Um, but that's not a replicator, right? Because when we know it's not a replicator, because in the episode Charlie X, um, Kirk specifically is talking to the galley and says if the crew has to eat synthetic meatloaf, I want it to at least look like turkey on Thanksgiving. So there is a galley, there are ovens, there is somebody's actually making food. So what we're seeing there is that my theory, and they don't really explain it at all, is that the food boxes, like you see in the in the crew lounge, and in one episode there's one in the transporter room for some unknown reason, um, is that's more like an automat. In the 50s and 60s, they had these things called automats, was basically a buffet where you would pay for each item. You'd put a quarter in a slot and open up the door, and you take a piece of pie out or whatever. Um, and that's what we're seeing there. I think what we're seeing with those food dispensers is that they're basically you're ordering something with the card, and then it is transported from the galley to the box, and boom, that's what you're getting. And we see that in Trouble with Tribbles, where Scotty, Kirk gets his lunch and he says, "This is my chicken sandwich and coffee," and it's all Tribbles on the tray. And Scotty says, "Yeah, they're into the machinery, all right." And the machinery that he's talking about is in the galley, where they prepare the food to be put um, into the food boxes. So we have this difference in scarcity because when you're still dealing with people making food, you're by definition not post scarcity necessarily. In the sense that you are when you have a replicator that can rearrange molecules. And we see this also in the question of there is a very interesting question about currency, though, because we in the early days, in original series, they have credits, right? Federation credits are money, basically. And we see this in Trouble with Tribbles, where they're arguing about Cyrano Jones and the bartender are arguing about how much to charge for a tribble, 10 credits, 3.5 credits, at whatever, but the credits are money, and the people on the station and on the Enterprise, in theory, have credits to spend on stuff like that at the space station. Now, whether those credits are some sort of universal um, uh, income, or are you actually get a salary based on your rank in Starfleet or whatever, we don't really know. They don't really go into that, but we do know that credits as a currency system do exist. And that again seems to change because by the time we get to Star Trek 4, the one with the whales, um, Kirk's, they're at the restaurant. Kirk and the woman scientist are at the restaurant, and they have to leave. And she says, "Let me guess, they don't have money in the 23rd century." And he says, "Well, they don't." And he, because he couldn't pay for the pizza. So, sometime between uh, the original series and the movies, which is a long span of period, a span of time. We're talking decades between those two. At some point, the use of credits really fell out of favor or out of need. They didn't have currency anymore. So that tells us that we're seeing these changes from a pre-post uh, uh, scarcity society, which you see in original series, to the beginnings of the post scarcity society with the elimination of credits as currency, and then into the true post scarcity society that we see in Next Gen and onward with the replicators. So this is just one aspect of it. There's a lot of other things that I could go into, and I might do a whole series of this on economics. But that I just wanted to get that concept out there: the post scarcity and the lack of currency in Star Trek. So anyway, hope you like this one. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. I will talk to you later.